In the winter of 1975, before Sylvester Stallone became a household name, before Rocky, before Creed, before every interview on Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon made headlines, he sat alone in a near-empty Los Angeles apartment with $35 to his name and a dog he could not afford to keep. The city outside hummed with indifference. Inside, a man with a paralyzed face and a slurred voice that would confuse audiences for decades was writing the only story that could save him from complete erasure. The paradox cuts deeper than any blade. The man who would teach the world about refusing to quit had already sold his wife's jewelry without telling her. He was not yet Sylvester Stallone, the icon. He was just a man on the edge, writing about another man on the edge, and neither of them knew if anyone would ever care. There is an irony in Sylvester Stallone's story that hurts too much to be coincidence. The child who could not speak clearly, whose face was partially paralyzed from a traumatic birth, whose own mother flinched when holding him. The teenager expelled from 14 schools who discovered in the darkness of movie theaters the only world that did not reject him. The action hero who would build an entire mythology around the inarticulate underdog. The man who speaks loudest when words fail him, whose fists and will became his language. All of that, so that decades later, his own body would begin erasing the very instrument he had forged against his own vulnerability. Life does not offer mercy. It offers only redirection. How does a boy with a drooping face and slurred speech become the defining action star of a generation? What was hiding behind the granite jaw and the invincible screen presence that made millions believe in Rocky Balboa, in Jake Carter, in Samaritan, in every character who was told he could not win? What happens when the body you weaponized against your own pain begins methodically and mercilessly to betray you? And what does it cost a man to be the inspiration when the inspiration was never really fictional at all? These are the questions that lead us back to the beginning, back to Hell's Kitchen, back to July 1946, and to a child who learned the only lesson that mattered: the world does not make room for you. You have to take it. Michael Sylvester Gardenzio Stallone entered the world on July 6, 1946, at Doctors Hospital in Manhattan's Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, and the birth was complicated in ways that would rewrite his entire existence. The forceps used during the difficult delivery severed a nerve on the lower left side of his face, creating a permanent partial paralysis that would droop his lip, slur his speech, and give him an expression that strangers would spend decades misinterpreting as menace, arrogance, or cruelty. It was none of those things. It was simply the visible scar of his arrival, the first way the world marked him as different. His father, Frank Stallone Sr., was a hairdresser with a temperament that erupted without warning, a man who believed discipline was something you administered with your fists. His mother, Jackie Stallone, was an astrologer with theatrical ambitions, a woman who wanted a child, but not necessarily the child she got. The apartment they occupied in the heart of Hell's Kitchen felt less like a home and more like a pressure chamber where the valve was stuck open. There was constant noise, constant tension, constant uncertainty about whether the next hour would bring laughter or violence or silence so complete it felt like drowning. When Sylvester was young, his parents divorced, and that fracture sent him ricocheting between households, between schools, between states of mind he did not have words for. There was no luxury, no industry connections, no paved road to anywhere. But there was a child who felt everything too intensely and had almost no way to express it except through silence, through watching, through the particular vigilance of survival. By his own count, Stallone attended and was expelled from, or quietly removed from, approximately 14 different schools before he turned 18. In each one, he was not Sylvester. He was the kid with the drooping face, the one whose words came out wrong, thick and slow, dredged from deep water. Other children have an instinct for difference, and they used his without mercy. The bullying was not occasional cruelty. It was architectural, built into the structure of every school day, every hallway, every lunch table where no one moved to make space for him. He learned very early that silence was safer than ridicule. Words were weapons when you could not control them. So he watched instead. He listened. He observed the way other boys moved through the world with an ease he would never have. He saw how they carried themselves, how they took up space, how they seemed to know something he did not know, some code he had not been given access to. And in that watching, in that longing, something began to crystallize. Years later, when he had become everything he once was not, Sylvester Stallone would confess, with a voice still rough around the edges, "I was incredibly insecure as a kid. I always felt inferior, like I was the lowest on the totem pole, almost like a socially retarded individual who could never make contact. The stutter, the drooping face, I thought I was literally a monster. I thought nobody would ever want anything to do with me." At 15 years old, expelled once again from yet another school, running out of institutions willing to absorb him, Stallone faced his first complete structural collapse. The educational system had not just failed him. It had formally, repeatedly, and bureaucratically rejected him. His first dream, shapeless as it was, the simple dream of being seen as ordinary, of belonging somewhere without being marked, had been destroyed not by a single blow, but by 14 consecutive ones. For most young men, this accumulation of institutional rejection becomes a life sentence, a narrative they internalize: "You are not wanted. You do not belong. Stop trying." For Stallone, it became pressure. It became the force that turns carbon into diamond. He did not know it yet, but the doors closing behind him were not endings. They were redirections. With the door of formal education effectively closed, Stallone drifted into the American College of Switzerland on an athletic scholarship, a last resort institution that seemed to want him only because he could throw a punch. It was there, almost by accident, almost as if fate had grown impatient with subtlety, that he wandered into a drama class taught by a teacher who did not see a boy with a drooping face and slurred speech. She saw someone who was already performing, already wearing a mask, already translating pain into presence. She told him so. The moment was unremarkable to everyone except Stallone. It was the first time an adult had suggested that his disability, his difference, his inability to speak clearly might not be a disqualification, but a texture, a depth, something that could be transformed into art. He discovered acting almost by desperation, discovered that when he inhabited another character, the stutter receded. The drooping face became part of the character's story rather than his own failure. On stage, behind the mask of someone else, he was finally free. It was not talent yet, it was recognition. The absolute silent certainty that he had found the place where he belonged. The child who could not speak had discovered that he could speak volumes through movement, through intensity, through the raw electricity of presence that no slurred voice could diminish. At 19, with barely $300 and a backpack containing everything he owned, Stallone arrived in New York City. The city in the early 1960s was not kind to dreams. It was a machine that ground them down with the cold indifference of a place that had already seen 10,000 young people arrive with hope and leave with empty hands and broken spirits. The city did not welcome him with applause. It welcomed him with slammed doors, with casting directors who told him his face was too unusual, his voice too strange, his entire presence too wrong for anything anyone wanted to see. He washed dishes in noisy restaurants where the heat made him sweat through his shirt by hour 2. He drove taxis through streets that never slept, through neighborhoods where hope went to die slowly. He loaded boxes, cleaned tables, moved furniture, and in every night shift he saved something no one could steal, the certainty that he belonged on a stage, that his strangeness was not a curse, but a currency. He shared tiny rooms with other actors equally hungry and equally stubborn, equally convinced that the world would eventually recognize them. Casting after casting, the door slammed in his face. "Your appearance is strange. Your voice does not work. You are not what we are looking for. You are not what anyone is looking for." 100 rejections, 150, 200, The numbers accumulated like scars. There were moments when New York felt not like an opportunity, but like a trap designed specifically for him. A maze with no exit. A test he would never pass. By 1973, Stallone had landed small roles in films no one watched. He appeared in uncredited scenes, played thugs and street criminals, got paid almost nothing, and got remembered by almost no one. He was living hand to mouth, apartment to apartment, decision to decision about which meal to skip so he could afford another audition. In 1974, desperation and hunger produced a small film called The Lords of Flatbush, a low-budget production about street gangs in Brooklyn. It was a nothing film. It was also everything to him. It was the first time his name appeared in credits that people actually read. And then in 1975 came the moment that rewired everything. He attended a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner on television. Wepner was a club fighter, a nobody, a man with no business being in the same ring as Ali. But for 15 rounds, Wepner did not go down. He fought. He refused to quit. The fight electrified something in Stallone that had been waiting for years for activation. He went home that night, and in a compulsive, frenzied state that lasted through the weekend, he wrote. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He wrote the story of Rocky Balboa, a small-time Philadelphia boxer nobody believed in, fighting the heavyweight champion of the world, not to win, but to go the distance, to prove that he was not just another bum from the streets. The story was his life poured onto yellow legal pad paper. The loser, the man marked by difference, the underdog nobody wanted, redemption through pure will and refusal. He finished the script in 3 days. Then he tried to sell it. Agent after agent turned it down. Producer after producer rejected it. Studio after studio said no. 100 rejections. 150. 200. The numbers kept climbing. And with each no, Stallone felt the old familiar weight returning. You are not good enough. Your story is not important. Nobody cares about your pain. Finally, in 1975, a small production company expressed interest. They offered him $300,000 for the script, a fortune for a man living on borrowed time and borrowed money. But with one condition, they would cast a real star in the lead role. Not him. Not the man who had written every word from his own broken places. They would cast Robert Redford or Ryan O'Neal or someone with a beautiful face and marketable name. Stallone said no. He knew with absolute certainty that if he accepted, there would be no Rocky. There would be a movie, but not the story he had bled onto those pages. It was him or nobody. The producers came back with another offer, $250,000 if he would walk away from the role. He said no again. Then they offered $50,000. Then they said he could have the role, but only if he took $10,000 for the script and accepted they would have final cut. Meaning, they could change anything, rewrite anything, erase anything that made it real. Stallone, with $35 in his account and a wife he had already betrayed financially, said no. Not because he was confident, because he had nothing left except the truth of his own story, and he would rather starve than sell that. Somehow, miraculously, improbably, the producers gave in. They gave Stallone a miserable budget of $1 million, an amount they spent on catering for bigger productions, and 10 weeks to shoot his story. The film that emerged was technically rough. The acting was raw. The production values were cheap, but when Rocky premiered on November 21, 1976, it exploded. It earned over $225 million worldwide against that $1 million budget. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. It won 3. It became the highest-grossing film of 1976. And Stallone, the man nobody wanted, became the voice of millions who refused to give up. But behind the red carpets and the million-dollar contracts and the interviews on Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and every talk show that suddenly wanted him, Something was beginning to crack. Success did not fix him. It only changed the shape of the damage. He made film after film, many of them terrible, many of them failures that critics tore apart with casual cruelty. Films like Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and Cobra and Demolition Man tested the limits of his credibility. There were 3 failed marriages. There was the death of his son Sage in 1997, a loss that broke him in ways no punch could recreate. A pain he confessed years later was the only thing that made him understand that success meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. By the early 2000s, Stallone seemed finished. Offers dried up. Studios did not return calls. He was considered washed up, a relic, a parody of himself. But at an age when most men accept defeat, Stallone did something extraordinary. He returned to the thing he understood best, the underdog's story. In 2006, he directed and starred in Rocky Balboa, a film about an aging boxer fighting one more time, not to win but to prove he still had something left to give. The industry laughed. The critics were brutal. And then something extraordinary happened. The film earned $214 million worldwide and proved that redemption has no expiration date. In Creed, released in 2015, Stallone played Rocky as a mentor, a man facing mortality, facing cancer, facing the knowledge that the best days were behind him but choosing to fight anyway. He earned his first and only Oscar nomination at 69 years old. The circle closed. The rejected child became the man who taught millions what it means to refuse to stay down. That is the real story, not the victory. The refusal.